Hello and good day to everyone attending today's webcast, Makerspaces 2.0, from Makerspace to Makerhub. Today's webcast is sponsored by Little Bits and School Library Journal. My name is Rebecca Joswick and I will be your moderator, but before we go further, I just have a few housekeeping items to run through with you. If you're experiencing technical problems, please use that purple Q&A button on the audience console and the webcast tech team will get to you as soon as possible. Also, if you have any questions or comments for the presenters, send those in at any time via that same purple Q&A button. We plan to save about 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the webcast to address your questions, so don't be shy, send those in. If your screen becomes locked due to your local network congestion or if you have some audio streaming issues, try refreshing your screen. You can press F5 if you're on a Windows machine, or if you're on a Mac, you can use Command R. Today's slide presentation will be available for download in the green Resources folder on the bottom menu dock. You'll get a certificate for continuing education credit. It's in there labeled certificate. There are also 2 additional resources for you, a Librarian's guide and a STEAM guide, so feel free to download those at any time. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Please tweet using the handle SLJournal, and today we're using the hashtag SLJLittleBits. With that, let's meet our presenters. As I said, I'm your moderator, Rebecca Joswick. I'm the Editorial and Research Director for the Board Group. We also have Christine Leonard, Senior Education Manager at Little Bits. She works on all things education related at Little Bits, and she admittedly spends way too much time gawking over the amazing projects students come up with. We also have David Saunders, Library Media Specialist at Greenwich Country Day School. He's an educator and library media specialist working in southwestern Connecticut. He has a love of good design, inquiry-based learning, and strong coffee. David says you can often find him in a library makerspace tinkering with this or that. He's also a Google certified innovator, trainer, and administrator, Raspberry Pi certified educator, Little Bits Global chapter leader, and rockstar educator. And we also have Susan Polos, school librarian at Fox Lane High School. Susan's president of the New York Library Association's section of school librarians. She's also a National Board Certified teacher and a Google Certified educator. She's starting her first year at Fox Lane High School after 17 years in the Bedford Central School District as an elementary school librarian. Susan has served on the 2014 Newberry Committee and continues to be active in many committees with the American Library Association and its divisions. Just to introduce today's topic briefly, I'd have to argue that the early concept of makerspace probably began with classes like auto shop, art, construction, welding, robotics. And these were school classes, and while they offered plenty of hands-on learning experiences, they were only available to students who took the class. So a student with a full schedule and a lot of interest wouldn't have access to those resources and tools to explore these things. And that's why it's so brilliant that school libraries are welcoming makerspaces and now Makerhubs, really creating areas of innovation, creation, and imagination where like-minded students can gather, learn, and share. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Christine.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that wonderful introduction. And hello to everybody here. I'm so glad you could join us. And I'm really excited about this topic. When I was thinking about what we wanted to talk about, I was thinking, well, what are makerspaces for? Why do we do them? And it's not just about creating a space. It's about creating a hub. It's about fostering community and learning. And the space is a way to do that. And so when I think about the question we're trying to answer, it's not how do we build a space. It's how do we build that hub. And so I'm very excited to talk about that today. And a quick agenda for what I'll be speaking about. I'm going to go quickly over what we think the current situation is with educational technology and in education today. I'll do a very quick intro to Little Bits for those of you who may not know what Little Bits is, and that way our expert presenters don't have to dwell on that too much. I will go into some tips for creating a makerspace, but really it's about creating a hub. And I'll finish up talking a little bit about STEAM and STEAM learning. I know it's a buzzword right now, and it's something that here at Little Bits we've really latched onto, and I think it's an important way to turn your space into a hub. So with that, I'll talk a little bit about the current situation. Your educators, I don't need to tell you this, but there is a high-tech youth and low-tech understanding amongst youth. And to be frank, adults. We all interact with hardware and technology every day, but we don't really understand how it works, why it works. We just use it. And at Little Bits, we don't think that's acceptable. What we also don't think is acceptable is that the barrier of entry to technical fields, particularly in STEM and STEAM, is too high. Girls, students of color, low-income students have persistent achievement gaps in STEM. The jobs of tomorrow are going to require creativity and innovation. In fact, this is a statistic that scares me and excites me at the same time. 65% of today's grade schoolers will have careers that haven't even been invented yet. And at the same time, students are asked to work on problems that have little relevance to their lives. And why is this important for librarians to tackle? Well, librarians are educators that are reaching so many students. They are really the pollinators that are bringing new ideas and new technologies and access to so many students. And it's really important that librarians are on board and have the tools to tackle this mission. So what is our mission? Our mission is to empower everyone to create inventions, both large and small, with our platform of easy-to-use electronic building blocks. And these are the electronic building blocks. This is what they look like. We have over 60 bits. Each bit is coded with a specific function, and they all snap together with magnets. Here's how they work. They're color-coded. The blue ones are your power. You always need power. And your green ones are your outputs. And that's just a very fancy way of saying that they do something. They light up, they buzz, they move, they make noise. The kids like the ones that make noise, fair warning. And just about anything you can think of. The pink ones are your inputs. These are the ones that change how the green ones behave. So for example, here we have a slide dimmer, which would work just like the dimmer for your lights at home. When you slide it up, you have more current going through to the rest of the circuit. And when you slide it down, you have less current going through the rest of the circuit. And your orange ones are your wires and your logic. This allows you to add more complexity to your circuits. And when you combine them with other materials, including Legos, craft materials, cardboard, anything you can think of, the possibilities for invention are limitless. Here we have an example of kids making what we call our bubble flutes. They've used our fan bit and some other crafty materials, and they have created a bubble bot. Here at Little Bits, we believe that it's important to be part of an ecosystem. We don't believe in being an island unto ourselves. So we don't want Little Bits to be used in a corner and not used with anything else. So we make it our priority to work and integrate as much as possible with the other tools and materials out there, including Lego, Makey, Scratch, Minecraft, Arduino, if this and that. We like to say that Little Bits has a low floor and a high ceiling. And what do I mean by this? Low floor means that it's easy to get started. The basic circuit that I showed before, anybody could do it. It snaps together. And you can start playing with lights and sounds and switches in motion very easily with very little technical experience. But as your creative and technical confidence grows, we say that we have a high ceiling. It grows with you, all the way up to coding, Internet of Things, and you can even code and create your own bits. So we want you to start with us and keep growing and make it limitless. The possibilities really are limitless. At the same time, we have wide walls. Little Bits works across curriculum. It works in the sciences, humanities, art, and math. One of my favorite examples in the humanities was a social studies class that was studying the Americans with Disabilities Act. And as part of the project, as part of project-based learning, the students were asked to invent something that would help someone with a disability. And one of the students invented a keyboard that somebody with vision problems could use. And so that's just an example. And I think it's important for librarians to access this too, because you are asked to be working across curriculum. You are asked to have wide walls, and we really want to support you in that endeavor. So these are some of our top librarian tips for creating a makerspace. And it's creating a makerspace, but really it's creating a Makerhub. And I know that David and Susan will get into this in more detail, but these are some of the tips that we've gathered with the librarians that we've talked to over the years. Consider your goals and existing resources and space that could be used. Building a maker community and culture is really key here, and that will make your space into a hub. So involving students in decision-making and promotion is one of the things about knowing your audience. And when you know your audience, you'll create something that they're going to want and they're going to want to use. And if you involve them, you know that they're going to want it, and you know that they're going to want to use it. And I know that Susan has some really awesome examples of this. Getting scrappy with funding, PTAs, donations, donorschoose.org, a lot of way to bring in funding. But at the same time, you don't need expensive materials to kickstart a makerspace, Makerhub. Make your materials and resources accessible. Find an organizational solution that will work for you and your space and for your constituents, for your patrons, for the students that are coming in and using it. You want to make sure that it's available for them and organized in such a way that they can actually take advantage of the awesome stuff that you've worked so hard to put together. This is a good example of one library that did this. They created a check-in program for teachers so that teachers can come and check out materials and bring it to their classrooms. And this is a great way to become the pollinator. We really do think that librarians are the pollinators of really good ideas in schools. And I hear it over and over again, and I see it over and over again. Allowing time to tinker, especially for your older students and adults and teachers, is important. I think that a lot of you out there can sympathize with this, that teachers are often reluctant to not know as much as students, right? They don't want to feel that they're underprepared, and they have an aversion to learning alongside students. I think that's changing to a certain extent, but allowing students and teachers time to tinker and get familiar is a great way to spread maker philosophy throughout the school. Display and share student patron work. It's easy marketing for your space and for your programs. And this is a big one. Tweet it. Use social media. And it's a great way, too, to establish yourself as the maker leader in your school. We see so many great examples of librarians just taking it to the next level and showing amazing things that their students are doing. And all of this is happening in the library. And we just find that so encouraging that these are hubs where people come to create and make amazing things. These are some of my favorites in here. On the left, you have some students who are in the Makerspace. They invented their own BB-8 robot by taking apart some old globes, putting in a little bits contraption that they could control with a remote control it that they invented, and they had their globes rolling all over the library. And that was just so inspiring. On the right, you have students racing their inchworms that they created, and it's lunch in the library. It's bringing these engineering challenges there, and it's where students want to be. It's where they want to spend their lunchtime, their free time, where they can create. On the top here, we have little bits challenges, but then with a writing activity with it. So it's not just unstructured time, it can also be structured. A couple more examples here. That this is where they want to spend their recess time. This is where they want to spend their lunches. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it's just an example of how powerful these spaces can be. These are a couple examples of libraries that have used donorschoose.org to great effect to fund their projects, and I definitely recommend it. And here are a couple examples of organization in the library. Some people do maker corners. Some people have mobile maker spaces that they can bring from classroom to classroom if necessary. And I do want to talk a little bit about STEAM. STEAM is adding arts to STEM, and we think of it as a mindset. It's not just a collection of subjects, and as one of my favorite teachers says, STEAM is not adding paint to science projects. It really is a mindset. It's about mixing the left brain and right brain and bringing this mindset to solving problems. And so, for example, on the left here, some students are using little bits to learn about computational thinking, but they don't realize that that's what they're doing. They don't realize that they are learning these really key 21st century skills while having fun. Same kind of thing on the right here. And I know that I'm running a little bit out of time, so I'm going to speed it up. But this journey is baked into what we think about when we come up with curriculum. It's about introducing the bits. Then you learn how to invent. We teach you, make this, try this out. And then at the end, we finish it up with open challenges. We don't tell you what to invent, but we give you open prompts. So invent something that helps someone else. And then you can start developing your own lines of inquiry. And what I think is really important about STEAM learning is that it connects students to real-world issues. Students are solving problems that they actually care about. On the left here, students did a 9-week entrepreneurship course where they had to find a problem, invent something around it, prototype it, get feedback, and then at the end they did a Shark Tank-like competition where local businesses came in and gave them feedback. And what I like about this is it's also bringing the outside in, and that is one tip that I've heard librarians say over and over. If you want to create a space that's a hub, bringing in the outside community is key to that. On the right, we have a girl who invented a bat. She was inspired by bat sonar. So she invented a contraption that when you approach an obstacle, it buzzes. And she thought that was great that you could use for if you're trying to find your way in the dark or if you had vision problems. And she was solving a problem that was relevant to her and that she thought was important. These are some of our open challenges, and we have lots of ideas on our website that you don't even need little bits for, frankly. These are open challenges where we give you a prompt and ask you and your students to find a way to solve it. So hack your classroom, invent something to make your classroom or library better, invent for good, invent something that helps someone else. Chain reaction contraptions, this would be a Rube Goldberg-like challenge, and we've seen some amazing examples of this in libraries that they've been sharing on social media. Hack your habits. Measure something, measure a habit. How many times do you use the recycling bin? And then invent something to improve that. And these are just examples that you could use in your library right away. I'll end it by saying that we do have a librarian's guide to Little Bits and STEAM. It's available in the resources section. I highly recommend that you download it. It was written by Colleen Graves, who is a fabulous Maker librarian, and some really good tips in there. And with that, I'm all set. I'm going to pass it off to Susan, and thank you very much. And please submit questions. We'll be answering them at the end.
Okay, thank you. My name is Susan, and 2 years ago, I participated in a district committee in my school district, which was focused on innovation, space, and technology. These are buzzwords right now. We met 5 times, and we talked about the purpose for innovation. We visited another school. We looked at other innovation spaces. We conferenced with Young Zhao. And from that experience, I wanted to create a culture in my library that would support risk-taking and offer authentic exploration. So last year, I started the Makerspace in what was formerly my office. You can see that picture there. There's a couple of kids working with little bits. I had asked some high school librarians I knew who had already started Makerspace in their libraries, and one of the librarians suggested that I order little bits. So I ordered 5 different kits. You can see the students were absolutely drawn to that. So it was a little bit like having candy. They just came, one of the students saw it from his classroom across the hall. He came in, and students started signing in, and they really loved making all the noises and the lights that we just heard about. And I discovered that students are really hungry for active learning opportunities. They like to learn from each other. The students can be teachers. One student videotaped himself showing step by step how to complete a little bit project, and he did this so that other students could build and assemble the projects that he could make. We talked about, you heard Christine talking about the low floor. I think it's really terrific that students as young as second and third grade can make things. In my experience, they wanted to come in, they wanted to spend recess in the Makerspace. Here you see students, I think we talked about using other materials along with the little bits. Here you can see one student who took a cardboard box and made a robot whose eyes lit up. They were able to make cars. Really amazing, all the different things that students can make with really by themselves. They're not even necessarily following directions. They're just figuring out what the green and the orange and the pink pieces can do. However, we also talked about how there's a high ceiling as well as a low floor. So some students really took advantage of the ecosystem that we talked about a little bit, using other tools, using Arduino, using Legos, using different materials. One particular third grader at our school began to pull together other Makerspace materials, and he wanted to know how to combine an LED board with the little bits, working with Arduino. And he was only in third grade. He started to need more support than I could give him. So you can see students gathered around looking at the Etch-a-Sketch. You can see this third grader working on the computer with coding, and there's our director of technology who came to help him, but it was even a little bit complicated for our director of technology. And so this is one of the best things that happened. We developed a partnership with the high school, and this is where we were able to bridge from an elementary school to the high school and bring students together with similar interests and different levels of ability to create and to innovate. And the most wonderful thing about this is that not only did that partnership allow the third grader to create what he imagined he could create using a variety of materials and the little bits, but the high school student was challenged and inspired to think about what a makerspace could look like in his school. So now that I am actually at the high school, we have a room, and our room is empty. It's waiting to be a hub. The high school student is so excited by the maker movement that he's attended the New York City Maker Fair. He's made connections. He's helping us write a grant. Our empty room awaits materials, but teachers have stepped up. We have teachers ranging from our science research teacher to our special ed teachers, which I think reflects the inclusive nature of making and makerspace, that it's not just for kids who are, flying high, or not just for kids who are struggling. It's for everybody to come together, and it's a different kind of learning. So it's very exciting, and we think it's just great. I think another thing that I'd like to share is how the makerspace, you see a room, but it's not just a room, because in this particular library, it's really changing the experience of library, and we're starting to think about a larger conversation about what library is, how students can be engaged, creating the kind of cart that you saw in an earlier slide, so that if the room is being used for something with one group of people, there's no reason that students can't continue to make or make in different spaces. It shouldn't be contained to one space. So we've had wonderful experience. I've had a great experience with the little bits all the way through from second graders to high school students, and also using them in combination with other materials, and also seeing what can happen, seeing the growth and the explosion of interest. I'm going to turn this over now to another librarian, to David Saunders, who is at the Greenwich Country Day School. I'm going to turn it over to David now.
Thanks so much. Hello, everybody. I'm super excited to talk to you about this. It's a subject that is near and dear to my heart. We have been sort of on the pathway to building a maker hub at our school for a number of years now. I want to say probably in about 2011 or so, we were able to secure some funding from our admin to open up our first library makerspace, somewhat as a pilot, and we were able to use that experience to leverage more funding, more support, and I'm super excited to say that we're in the process now of a capital campaign to redo our entire middle school building. And a big part of that redesign is going to include a STEAM lab, which is the first that we've had here at the school ever. And really, really excited about what the potential is for that space. And I think, you know, as Susan mentioned, as Christine mentioned, you know, it's so much about the connections and the authentic relationships and building meaningful connections to the curriculum. I think that's where we see the most potential, at least in our space here. So I wanted to talk to you a bit about it. I really love Christine's notion of librarians as pollinators. That has certainly been the case here. I may not have the ability to directly impact curriculum per se, but I certainly have the ability to leverage the space and also the engagement and the enthusiasm of our students to help spark interest and curiosity among the faculty for making some changes in their curriculum, which is amazing. So I wanted to talk to you a bit about what that process was like for us, and hopefully that will generate some conversation at the end during the question and answer to maybe help better inform you how you can go about it, but also me. There's still so much for me to learn as well, and I'd love to learn from your experiences in your space as well. So my initial thought on this was, all right, so you have a space maybe, you have some tools, perhaps you got some funding, you have some materials, you have a makerspace, whether it's in your library or it's in a classroom or it's a mobile cart that you bring around somewhere. That's an amazing first step. But I think the conversation we're having here today is, all right, well, now what? How do we move from that to something that is a little bit more ambitious? You know, how do we go about breaking down those barriers and that siloed thinking when it comes to makerspace supported education? And every school, every library is different, but here's how we're in the process of going about making that really important transition at our school. As a middle school librarian, I work primarily with grades 4th through 6th, although we are a school that runs nursery through 9th grade. I am fortunate to still have official library classes. That isn't necessarily the case in our upper school library, and it may or may not be the case in your library, but I absolutely use that classroom time not only to make sure that we cover essential skills for research and inquiry and reading time and all of that important stuff. We also use it as an opportunity to dig into things like design thinking and exploration activities. And so when I look at our curriculum and our classes, I definitely see this as an opportunity for building that momentum that I see happening here at our school. By structuring the activities in our class so that they focus on teamwork, collaboration, iteration, empathy. I love the slides earlier about connecting to the outside world and finding meaningful ways of utilizing these skills and competencies to help solve real world problems. That's where we're reinforcing the idea that our makerspace, which we have called the library here at our school, that the library isn't sort of an isolated, siloed experience, but it's one that supports their learning as well as the overall mission of our school and the values that we hold dear as a school that are in our mission statement. What is it that we're hoping and working and striving to do every single day with our students? We make sure in all of our work in those classes to celebrate, promote, and share not only the finished product that the students come up with, and they come up with really amazing things, as I'm sure you've seen in your own work, but also the process. And the process can be messy, it's unpredictable, but the library is in a central location in our school. We get a lot of traffic in and out, and that includes faculty, that includes students, that includes administrators. And as they're walking through and seeing the students working in small groups, collaborating on projects, they can't help but stop and ask questions. And if I had a nickel for every time I had a spontaneous conversation with a faculty member or an admin about what are they doing? Can I do that? And they can just hop in. I could retire at this point. It happens all the time. We're planting those seeds by being really open and public about the work that we're doing in the library. And I think that's important because at the end of the day, student engagement and enthusiasm help drive that momentum, right? We're all in it for the students. We're all in it to do the absolute best we can to set them up for success and to empower them to be their best selves. And as faculty and administrators walk through and see students actively engage in something, that is powerful. And that is something that I have really been fortunate to sort of be able to leverage, I guess is the best word for it, without trying to sound cynical about it. But I'm really mindful about, we're trying to build a culture here, and I don't want to be doing it sort of under the radar. I want to be really upfront about it because I do think it's important work, and I do think that it's important for everybody, all of our stakeholders, to be aware of it. So all that being said, unfortunately, I'm not able to have library classes with every student at our school. We have just shy of 1,000 students here, and it just doesn't work out that way. So in addition to our normal library classes, I also offer what we call micro courses, and you could certainly call them clubs. They're essentially the same thing. It's a way to provide different opportunities to all students because we really don't want to create an environment that implies that our library makerspace is sort of a singular experience. We want it to be a hub for learning, and so we want it to be connected. We want it to be a sort of connected to different nodes of learning and exploration in our community. And so we've been running these micro courses, and some of them are focused on specific design challenges. And students work together over a period of weeks. Some of them are 6 weeks, some of them are 10 weeks. We have one that's running 12 weeks this year to build, refine, and share their work. This group here in this picture is working on a Hack Your Habits challenge. And they found a way to hack activity trackers and then build a device that would allow them to track steps on activity trackers without taking a single step, which was an interesting solution to the problem that they had come up with. In addition to that, others are more open-ended and sort of focused on exploration to open up possibilities and spark imagination and curiosity in our students. And so we sometimes will just have suggestion cards. I'll put out materials, and there will be just this past week I had one. We're getting ready for our Halloween parade on Friday, and it was simply build something spooky. I had it out on a table in the library, had materials out, and as students were here at recess or filtering between classes or here in the morning, they would sit down for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and build something spooky. And then I was there to take pictures of it and share it out. We've got monitors in our hallways and in our lobbies for us to share the work that students come up with. But just something for them to be constantly building and exploring and trying out new possibilities. And others of the clubs are deep dives into specific areas, such as programming, do-it-yourself, robotics. Our 12-week Robotics Club this year is starting up next week, and super excited about that. So in short, we're working to make the library more than the sum of its parts. It's more connected, more integrated than what I think we would perceive to be the traditional shop class, which is super important and absolutely provided important skills and competencies to students for generations. We want to build on that and create something that is a bit more connected to our overall curricular goals. One important way, I think, to do this is through collaboration with teachers to reimagine our curriculum. And I've been fortunate in the last few years to have built some great relationships with our faculty here who are more than willing to explore new ideas. And I think Christine mentioned sometimes faculty are a little uncomfortable feeling as if they know less than the students do. And that is absolutely the case many times. And it's finding ways to push through that with them, and that's a challenge and that's difficult. And we have worked on, not only traditional professional development days, but also informal gatherings in the evenings where we have materials out and we basically have, we order dinner and just have an organic, challenge-based, inquiry-based evening with faculty who are maybe interested. They've heard about a little bit, so they've heard about project-based learning, or they've heard about these other things, but haven't had the time in their schedule or haven't felt comfortable to really dive into it. And so creating the environment for them to feel a little bit more comfortable with that, we have found to be really, really helpful. And so over those past couple of years, been able to create some interesting curricular changes. So, for example, this one here, for years and years and years, our 6th grade has studied ancient civilizations, and they've done projects on Greek myths and Egyptian myths and really pretty awesome mythological studies that almost always ended up with a project that's a poster board or it's a 5-paragraph essay. And so students and teachers were getting a little tired of the same project year after year. And so we were able to sit down and create just a different opportunity with the project where rather than do the 5-paragraph essay and rather than do the poster board, we had students work in pairs to choose an ancient god, goddess, or hero and then identify an object of significance for that particular character, and then come into our library and build something that represents that object of power. So in this particular case, that's Thor and his hammer, but we had lots of great examples, including Zeus and his lightning bolt. Working with our language arts teachers, we were, again, able to take a look at what traditionally had been a project wherein students identified pivotal moments in a narrative arc. And then they would write their paragraph or they would write their essay where they would identify what it is, or they would draw, sort of that narrative arc where the climax and the denouement. And here we challenged them to read a book. It was an independent reading challenge. And then identify a pivotal moment in that story, and then come into the library and build something that showcases that pivotal moment. And some students very literally rebuilt that pivotal moment with characters and a setting, and they would use little bits for sound and or kinesthetic movement. And some students took it more thematically, and they found something a little bit more figurative, and they built something that wasn't a literal interpretation, but more of a figurative interpretation that demonstrated their understanding of a key moment in the story. A few years ago, I was able to work with an upper school English teacher who had been doing Shakespeare for years and years and was interested in exploring new possibilities. And so we were able to take the Shakespeare bus that I've had in my classroom and library for many years and create sort of a Zoltar-like box where we created circuits using little bits, and then we used Scratch, and we had students choose a passage from their Shakespeare play that they were reading, which I think was Macbeth, that spoke to them, and then had them read it aloud. We recorded it, we imported it into Scratch, and then we created this circuit where students could go up and press the button, and then they would hear a range of students reading aloud their favorite quote from Macbeth, which I thought was just super fun and created for us the possibility to explore using little bits in our language arts classroom. And then we have our evening events, which are hugely important to us because despite our best efforts, the schedule is always working against us. We very rarely have the time that we need to either meet with faculty and plan or meet with students and continue working on that project. We just don't have enough time. And so starting a few years ago, we started offering monthly evening events. And these are always centered on family and community. And so it's usually about a 3-hour event. We often will take those design challenges that Christine mentioned that Little Bits puts out once a month, and we will usually use those as at least the foundation for our design challenge. And students come with their families, sometimes with their siblings who may or may not be students here at our school, and we have materials out. We create the environment for them to feel free to explore new materials, to dive in to things that they're uncomfortable with. I almost always have a handful of faculty who are volunteering to come and help out, which I'm super grateful for. And we spend about 3 hours just building, sharing. We usually have a gallery walk at the end of the night where people showcase the work that they came up with. And it's a great way for us to continue to build on that momentum that we have during the school day, outside of the school day, and including a greater number of our community members who may not be here during our school hours from 8 to 4 in the afternoon. And so these evening events have been really popular. We have quite a few students who come, but also I think really important for us to continue building on that Makerhub mentality that we have here at the school. Because I think it provides students the opportunity to sort of flip the paradigm and to be the expert, to show their parents or their siblings how they built things or how these tools work in tandem, and to solve these problems in ways that they're becoming increasingly comfortable with and that we're finding parents may be a little less comfortable with. That's been really, really powerful for us. I think sort of to sum it up, I think creating a culture of making is in some ways like the holy grail of library makerspaces. It is essential for us to push beyond the silos of curriculum and build meaningful relationships and connections with all stakeholders, whether they are teachers, administrators, parents, siblings, because the mindset of making is bigger than any of our maker spaces. It's a profoundly important part of helping prepare our students for what we are acknowledging is a very uncertain future. And so with that, I would love to learn a bit more about what you all are doing and engage in some question and answer so that we can continue to support each other in this important work.
Okay, excellent. Thanks so much, David, and thanks, Susan. We do have quite a few great questions from the audience. Now, I know, David, you're teaching elementary now, and Susan, though you've moved on to high school, you spent a great deal of time at an elementary school. So I'll let you both address this. Susan, I'll throw it over to you first. One attendee is at an elementary school, and she's wondering exactly when children are able to come in. Do you schedule time? Do you have a sign-in? Is it only at recess? She said she's worried she might have too many children try to come in at once. So how do you address that, Susan?
Yes, it was a very, very popular, and I did have students come in during their lunch. So students actually had different lunches. We had at my school, 3rd and 5th grade had the same lunch, and 2nd and 4th grade had the same lunch. And I didn't want more students than could have an opportunity to actually work independently, some at the same time. So in the school where I was, I did have regular classes. So I would have a particular fourth grade class, fifth grade class, third grade class on Mondays. And those students from those days, I would say, okay, 4 students from each class could come in during their lunch that day, and I would keep track so that there was a rotation through. So everybody had a chance. Not everybody wanted to come, but most students did want to come. I also had students had the opportunity to make things with other materials. So we had duct tape, felt, we had wood and wood glue, and kids were making things actually, with those kind of more traditional materials. Sometimes we would cross over, as you saw, with the robot. And then there were kids who would be working with the little bits, and that would cross over too with Arduino and Raspberry Pi and other materials. And then we had kids who were just on computers coding, and we had kids reading. So there were different kids, different activities during recess, and it worked out okay. But it is, I think the biggest challenge is making sure that everybody has a chance who wants to come and finding time. At least in public school, the biggest challenge is always time, and the other challenge is space. Was I helpful at all? Because maybe
no, that was a great answer. And David, I know you mentioned you've had to go so far as to hosting monthly evening events just to kind of keep up with the demand. So on a day-to-day basis, how do you deal with the demand of having a lot of students interested in this?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and it pulls in the question of materials and all of that. Yeah, basically, I arrive at school at 7:30. I almost always have a handful of students who are here, kind of ready for me to get here. They've beaten me here by a few minutes, and they're ready for me to open the door and jump in on something. So I'm mindful that I have them in the morning, so I try and get here as early as I can. Recess is always a super busy time here in the library, so I prepare for that. I try not to schedule any meetings during recess so that I can be here to do what I need to do in terms of facilitating, asking questions, making sure people have what they need. And then we have a sign-up period from 3 to 4. So I mentioned the micro courses that we offer. Those are 2 days a week. Students during that time also have the opportunity to go to like band or chorus or whatever. We also have just a library sign-up, so they can come from 3 to 4. And that's a time for them either to use the library as a place for them to do study hall or do some independent reading, but it's also a time for them if they want to come and continue working on a project, they can do it then, or if they just want to come in and start working on a project, that's also available to them. And so I'm learning sort of year after year, day after day, that being flexible and responsive to the needs in the middle school are different than they are in the upper school. And so it took me a little bit to transition for that, but just trying to be as flexible as I can with them and recognize that even though we have as much time as we can during the day, we might need the evening events. And even though we have the evening events, sometimes people can't make those because of sports schedules or family commitments. And so, it's, I guess, to some degree, we do the absolute best that we can, and we're always looking for ways to improve.
Okay, great. And kind of speaking to your point about how there is a difference between the upper grades and the lower grades, one attendee is asking, it's a fair question, how do you foster collaboration with elementary school kids since, sharing is kind of a concept that they're still kind of growing into at that point. So David, how do you get kids to want to collaborate and not just grab everything and go into a corner?
Yeah, that's a good question. For us, I think it is largely a factor of our culture here at the school. And so I think when we get fourth grade students, we do have a lower school innovation lab, and it's run by some faculty members we have down lower school. But I work with fourth grade and up for the most part. For them, sharing is kind of part of what our culture here at the school is. But that being said, I'm certainly always mindful of assigning them to groups and doing so in ways that are legitimately fair. I think obviously in elementary school, fairness and equity are of huge importance to them. And so I have different ways of doing that. I'm sure we all have our tricks for finding ways to fairly assign groups of students, which I do. And then for me, it's sort of that classroom management piece. It's popping in, it's making sure that everyone has a voice and that we have sort of those cultural norms in effect for everyone to feel as though they're participating in meaningful ways. And of course, we have times when that doesn't happen, and that's where sort of as the educator, I need to step in and help facilitate those conversations with them. But by and large, I have found that by the time I get them in 4th grade, they feel very comfortable sharing not only the materials, but also their thoughts and their ideas and their questions, which I think is a factor or a product of our community here.
Okay, great. And Susan, I know according to your presentation, you've spent some time with 2nd and 3rd graders who might not quite, have that same culture down yet. So I'm sure you've seen a little bit of breakdown of the collaboration. So how do you kind of deal with that and work to foster the collaboration that kids really need to develop to make this the type of learning activity it's meant to be?
Well, I think having the opportunity to work with the materials, to have that chance to spend recess doing something that they clearly want to do, that it's a privilege to do, it encourages good behavior. So I've not really had a lot of problems with kids wanting something that somebody else has. More often, there might be a student who is a clear leader, who maybe knows how to put things together while another student is watching. And I think it's an opportunity for students where you want to make sure that every student feels. Can you hear me?
I can now. I think you dropped off for a second.
So I think it's important for all the students to feel like they have opportunities to be the creative voice, so that if one student wants to make something and another student doesn't want, say, to make a car, wants instead to make a robot, that there are enough materials for each student to do his or her own project. Not everything has to be collaborative. It's great when it is collaborative, but sometimes it's an individual student working on an individual project.
Okay, great. And then kind of speaking of materials in general, I mean, I'm sure you have a limited amount, and of course kids might bring in their own. And as you both discussed, not everything has to be little bits, but, found objects, a box, an egg carton, you can use just about anything. But Susan, how long, and this might depend, but how long do you keep these student creations together? Do you reuse a lot of the objects? Do the students break down the projects, maybe put them back together? So how do you kind of keep track of your materials in that way?
If a project is in the middle of being worked on, say a student is making a robot, then we might put the robot up on a shelf with a little note saying the name of the student, and it would stay up there for maybe a week or two while the student had the chance to work on it. But everyone understands that there's a limited number of little bits, there's a limited number of resources, and the box will be reused too. Everything is reused, and I think that's part of the charm. Like, this was once a robot, and now it's a dollhouse, and this was a buzzer, and now it's a car. But I think there is a limited, finite amount of resources. However, we did have, and some of the resources, once they're used, they're used. Duct tape, it's used, you're not going to use it again. We ran out of balsa wood pretty quickly. I kept trying to replace that. It was very much in demand. But that's the great thing about the little bits or a box, is that you can keep reusing those materials.
Hey, David, I'm going to probably assume your answer is pretty similar to Susan's, but do you want to talk a little bit about how long you keep your student creations together and how often you might reuse some of the parts?
Yeah, it's a really great question, especially with limited space for keeping things. We have, I guess, a handful of student shows, I guess is the best way. I want to say art show, but it's not art show. But we have sort of display cases that we have in our middle school lobby where we can display projects a few times a year. And so depending on whether or not this project is going to be displayed, we may keep it in the library for a while, because I do think that having student work out is another great way for us to build on that momentum and have students and faculty walk by and go, oh my gosh, what is that? How does that work? Can I make something like that? So we do have things out for a while, but I've found that probably after 3 weeks or so, I think, and I'm usually pretty mindful to say to the student, hey, so I'm thinking I'm going to pull this apart. Does that sound okay to you? 99% of the time, they're fine. They've built it. they've shared it, they've talked about it, it's been on display for a few weeks, and then at that point I think they're ready to say, yeah, no, that makes sense, because as was mentioned, there's a general awareness that the materials are finite and we do need to use them again. We have the Pro Library set here in our library, which has allowed us to keep projects out a little bit longer because we have a greater variety of bits. But I would say 3 weeks, maybe a month at the absolute most.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I mean, with limited resources, space, and so many students wanting to get their hands on this stuff, it's kind of nice to even let it be on display for that long, to be a little proud of it and show other people. But like you said, it's, that students understand that it does need to be, taken down and used for other purposes. It's great and kind of speaks to the success of the culture aspect of the whole Makerspace concept. And then I've got a couple attendees who kind of asked a similar question. David, I know you talked about a couple of ways you try to get teachers, you mentioned perhaps admin on board by offering the standard professional development and then having your informal evenings out to try to really get your colleagues on board. But this one, a couple attendees have said they still get a lot of resistance from admin, from other teachers, and even other librarians wondering why they need a makerspace when they have, and this is high school in particular, digital production lab, engineering lab, a lot of already technical savvy labs. So what advice can you give to, I guess, do more than professional development and informal nights out to get everybody else on board?
Yeah, that's a super important question. We have our video production lab, and we have sort of the high tech stuff, and all that is really wonderful stuff, and we're so fortunate to have that here at the school. But I think the Makerhub mentality is more than the tools, and I think probably we would all agree on that. So when we talk about the Makerhub or the Maker mindset, we're not just talking about high tech tools. We're talking about a mindset of empowerment where every member of the community feels like they can make a difference. They can address a problem. They can create a solution to an opportunity or a challenge that they found in their community. And so I think in terms of trying to continue to build momentum, I know I keep using that term, among the faculty in the community or the admin, I have found the most valuable thing by far for us is the student excitement, and finding who are your allies, who are those teachers who are willing to step out of that circle of comfort and say, all right, yeah, I don't really know a whole heck of a lot about all this stuff that we're doing, but I do see that my students would probably benefit from doing something different. And then taking that opportunity, building something really great with that teacher, and then being really mindful to share it. Not in a way that's aggressive and obnoxious, and I can be guilty of that at times, but in ways that are hopefully empowering to the faculty to see that there are ways of meaningfully implementing these tools, yes, but more importantly, the mindset in ways that are powerful for our students' learning, and also for our teachers' learning, which I think is also really important. We can talk about the traditional professional development model, and I think that has its place, but I do think giving teachers authentic and actionable opportunities to learn how to improve their curriculum sort of on a day-to-day basis is absolutely essential. And so that's why I think the librarians, again, going back to the pollinator metaphor, are hugely important, because we have some more flexibility within our space and our curriculum than maybe traditional classroom teachers do. And so to recognize that and to want to use that flexibility to help support and inspire our teacher colleagues.
Okay, great. And I know we've just got a couple more minutes, but Christine, you're in and out of so many schools. Can you kind of speak to the resistance you see and how librarians can help get everybody on board?
Sure, and I think David really summed it up well. If librarians are the pollinators, they're the ones who are connecting the dots, right? And we see this a lot with those who adopt the STEAM mindset. It's not about having separate subjects in their own silos and never shall they interact. It's about using everything to solve problems, to develop lines of inquiry, and librarians are uniquely situated to do that. So I think to this particular question, it's that's the argument that a lot of librarians can make, that their spaces are the hubs and they connect all the dots.
Okay, great. And with that, I think that's going to be our kind of final comment. We've run out of time. Audience, I know there were a lot of questions that didn't get answered live, but they will be forwarded to our presenters today, and they will get those answered for you right away. I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and thanks to our presenters, Christine, Susan, and David. Great job really explaining kind of the next steps for Makerspaces, Makerhubs, and turning it more into a mindset and a culture than simply a program. Audience, please remember to download your certificate of completion, a copy of today's slides, and a couple of really excellent resources from Little Bits that can help you kind of get started if you're thinking about implementing some of this at your school. So thanks everyone again for attending. You'll receive an email when this webcast is archived, usually in about 24 hours, and you'll have a link to view the on-demand session. For a complete list of all archived and upcoming webcasts, you can go ahead and visit schoollibraryjournal.com. Next week, November 1st, we are kind of having one, if you're interested in today's. It'll be called STEAM with an emphasis on A, meaning they'll be taking a deeper look into how art integrates with STEM. So we hope you can join us for that webcast as well. And with that, everyone, take care and have a great day.